The garage smelled of rust, oil, and forgotten dreams, a combination that felt strangely comforting to Corporal Marcus Hayes. The Marine had returned from deployment just months ago, his hands still carrying the memory of grit, sweat, and the weight of responsibility, and now he found himself staring at a rusted hulk of a car he had bought for $50 from a junk lot on the edge of town. The vehicle was more of a skeleton than a machine. Metal panels pockmarked with corrosion, tires flat, and glass cracked and clouded with age. Most people would have walked away, leaving it to the ravages of time. But Marcus saw potential, a challenge, something to repair, to restore, to wrestle back from the edge of decay. It was in his nature to take what others dismissed and give it life, to fight against neglect, to reclaim. Beside him, Duke, his German shepherd, padded silently. The dog had been with him through long nights of loneliness, the echoes of past battles, and the unsettling quiet that followed war. Duke was no ordinary dog. His senses were keen, honed by instinct and years of quiet observation, and he had a way of reading the world that Marcus could never fully explain. He had rescued Duke from a shelter shortly after returning from his last deployment, drawn to the dog's alertness, the shadow in his eyes, the quiet strength that mirrored his own. The pair moved in a rhythm understood by few. Marcus handled the tools and the rust, Duke handled the instincts, the warnings, the silent nudges toward discovery. Marcus knelt beside the driver's side, wrench in hand, muttering to himself about the stubborn bolts, the seized engine parts, the corrosion that threatened to crumble beneath his fingers. His mind wandered between the mechanical challenge and memories of the battlefield, a place where improvisation, patience, and endurance had meant survival. He wiped sweat from his brow, paused to listen to the quiet hum of the garage, and then froze. Duke had stopped mid-step, ears erect, body rigid, tail lowered but tense. The dog's gaze was fixed on the rear of the car, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Marcus followed the line of sight, curiosity and unease mingling in equal measure. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. Duke didn't move, didn't bark, didn't indicate fear, just a silent insistence, a pull toward the unexpected. Marcus set down his wrench and edged closer, brushing aside a tangle of weeds and debris clinging to the car's rear fender. The ground was uneven, littered with old tools, leaves, and fragments of metal. And then Duke acted. The dog dove forward, digging with precision at a spot just behind the axle. Marcus watched in disbelief as rusty metal shifted, revealing the corner of something solid beneath the decay. He knelt, heart pounding, and carefully uncovered it. A small, rusted toolbox, its paint chipped and edges corroded, almost hidden by the years of neglect. Marcus's fingers trembled slightly as he lifted the toolbox, the weight heavier than its size suggested. It seemed insignificant at first glance, a relic from a forgotten mechanic's career, yet there was something about it, a sense of anticipation, as though the object had waited all these years for the right hands to hold it. Duke pressed close, nose nudging Marcus's arm, tail stiff, eyes sharp and alert. Marcus had learned over time that Duke's instincts were rarely wrong. The dog's behavior suggested there was more here than a forgotten toolbox. There was a story, a secret, a hidden truth waiting to be revealed. He set the toolbox carefully on the cracked concrete floor and pried it open. A thin plume of dust rose, catching the sunlight streaming through the garage window in hazy streaks. The contents were not what he expected. There were no wrenches, no spark plugs, no random screws. Instead, there were papers, dozens of them, yellowed and brittle with age, folded neatly and tied with a faded ribbon. Marcus's breath caught. The papers smelled faintly of smoke and mildew, yet they carried a weight, a history. He untied the ribbon carefully, revealing the first few pages. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, meticulous, looping across the fragile paper. It was not about cars, repairs, or invoices. It was about people, lives, events, details that had been forgotten by the world. Duke nudged Marcus again, soft and insistent, as if encouraging him to continue. Marcus took a deep breath and began to read, carefully, reverently. The first lines described towns and homes that no longer existed, families that had vanished, and small acts of heroism that had been erased by time. There were letters addressed to lost friends, sketches of buildings and streets that had been torn down decades ago, and meticulous notes chronicling events that had slipped through the cracks of official records. Each page was a portal to a world that had been quietly erased, and Marcus felt the weight of discovery pressing down on him. He realized that the car, the toolbox, and these documents were not random. They had been preserved intentionally, hidden, waiting for someone to uncover them. Hours passed unnoticed as Marcus pored over the papers, reading letter after letter, sketch after sketch, chronicle after chronicle. The garage, once merely a place to tinker, had transformed into a sanctuary of history and memory. Each piece he uncovered was a fragment of a forgotten world, preserved by someone who had cared enough to hide it, perhaps fearing that time and neglect would erase it forever. Duke remained close, silent and alert, tail occasionally flicking, eyes never leaving Marcus or the papers. It was as if the dog understood the significance of every discovery, that their mission went beyond a rusted car or a pile of forgotten documents. Marcus felt a deep connection to what he held. These papers were more than historical records. They were stories of survival, courage, loss, and resilience. They were the voices of people who had been erased by neglect and time, and now they had found a witness. He realized, with a profound sense of awe and responsibility, that Duke had led him here not by accident, but by instinct, loyalty, and purpose. The rusted car had been a guidepost, a marker, but the dog had been the key, the one who could sense what lay hidden beneath the surface, guiding Marcus to a truth that the world had almost forgotten. Night fell, but Marcus did not notice. He sat cross-legged on the garage floor, surrounded by fragile pages, yellowed photographs, and sketches of forgotten places. Duke lay beside him, head resting on Marcus's knee, ears twitching at every sound in the quiet garage. Marcus knew that what he held in his hands was extraordinary, not just because of the content, but because of the journey it had taken to get here. This was history preserved by instinct, by loyalty, by care. And it had found him, a Marine returned from war, ready to fight for what others had left behind, guided by the silent, unwavering determination of a dog who had seen what humans could not. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the next batch of papers from the rusted toolbox. Each page seemed to hum with importance, brittle edges threatening to crumble under the slightest pressure. He spread them carefully across the garage floor, moving with the precision of a soldier trained to handle fragile yet crucial information. Duke remained by his side, ears pricked, eyes scanning the room, alert to every sound, every movement. The dog had led him here, and now he stayed as a guardian, a sentinel who understood that these documents were not just remnants of a forgotten world, they were a call to action. As Marcus unfolded the first letter, he realized the handwriting was not merely functional but deliberate, each letter looping in a style that suggested patience, discipline, and care. The content was astounding. It detailed the life of a small town erased by economic collapse and migration, chronicling the names of families, the trades they practiced, the small victories and tragedies that had shaped their existence. There were references to school plays, births, deaths, and local conflicts, all details the modern world had overlooked. He traced the handwriting with his fingers, as if feeling the pulse of a life once lived, and Duke nudged his hand, seemingly affirming the weight of discovery. The next pages revealed sketches, maps, and diagrams of neighborhoods, alleyways, and structures that had been demolished long ago. Marcus studied each sketch carefully, noting the level of detail and care. Some contained annotations about who lived where, who helped whom, and who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It became clear that whoever had hidden these papers had meticulously documented not only the physical world, but the human connections that had defined it. These weren't just historical records, they were a chronicle of humanity, preserved in secrecy, waiting for someone perceptive enough to appreciate them. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Marcus read letters addressed to loved ones lost to time, each one brimming with emotion, regret, hope, or longing. One letter spoke of a soldier writing to his family from a distant war, detailing not the politics of conflict, but the small, intimate moments of camaraderie, fear, and bravery. Another described a teacher in a town that no longer existed, painstakingly recording the names of students, their achievements, and the lives they had led after leaving her classroom. Marcus's chest tightened with emotion. These were stories erased by history, lives forgotten by the march of time, yet preserved here by someone who had known the importance of remembrance. Among the papers were photographs, black and white and sepia-toned, depicting faces that stared directly into the camera. Some were smiling, some solemn, some caught mid-action, frozen in moments that Marcus could only imagine. One photograph showed a young Marine standing with his unit, the expression on his face one of quiet determination and pride. Marcus studied it closely, recognizing the discipline, the posture, the aura of duty, qualities that mirrored his own experience. He wondered about the fate of the men in the photo, about the life of the young Marine who had captured their story for posterity. Duke pressed his nose against the photo, sniffing it with focused attention, and Marcus shivered. Somehow, the dog seemed to sense the significance of each discovery on a level that transcended human understanding. Marcus's exploration grew more intense as he uncovered military documents and personal journals. The journals were meticulous, containing not just lists of names and events, but reflections, thoughts, and fears. One entry described the aftermath of a small battle, focusing not on strategic outcomes, but on the humanity of those involved, acts of kindness, courage, and endurance that the official records had ignored. Marcus's eyes filled with tears as he read. The documents were more than historical. They were moral testimony, accounts of lives lived with honor, struggles endured with dignity, and choices made in the quiet moments between chaos and survival. Duke's attention never wavered. The dog circled the area, sniffed at corners, and occasionally nudged Marcus toward particular sheets or photographs, as if guiding him to the most crucial pieces of information. Marcus began to understand that the dog's instincts were not random. They were finely tuned responses to the energy and significance of what lay before them. The partnership between man and dog had never felt so profound. Marcus realized that Duke's guidance had led him not only to a car and a toolbox, but to an entire world hidden in plain sight, waiting to be rediscovered, preserved, and honored. By late evening, the garage was a maze of papers, photographs, sketches, and documents spread across every available surface. The room smelled faintly of dust, rust, and paper, and the air was thick with the weight of history. Marcus leaned back on his elbows, exhaustion and awe mingling within him. He realized that the rusted car had been a vessel, the toolbox a portal, and Duke the key to unlocking this treasure trove of forgotten humanity. Each page he read reinforced the importance of their discovery. The world had forgotten these people, their lives, their struggles, and their triumphs. Marcus vowed silently to change that. The night outside deepened, but the garage seemed to pulse with life. Marcus continued to document, photographing the pages and making notes. He carefully arranged the letters and sketches, noting the sequence and content, and Duke sat at his side, occasionally resting his head on Marcus's knee, a steady presence amidst the flood of history. Together, they worked in quiet harmony, a team bound by instinct, loyalty, and a shared mission. Marcus understood that what they were doing transcended personal curiosity or fascination. It was an act of preservation, a reclamation of memory, and a tribute to the lives that had been erased by neglect. By the time Marcus finally paused, the first hints of dawn were visible through the dusty windows, casting a pale golden light across the garage. He looked at Duke, whose eyes reflected both pride and patience, and realized that their partnership had led him to a responsibility far greater than he had anticipated. The rusted car and its hidden treasure were no longer merely a project. They were a bridge between past and present, between forgotten lives and the chance for recognition. Marcus rose slowly, stretching, and whispered to Duke, We're just getting started, boy. There's so much more we have to uncover. The dog's ears twitched, tail flicking once in acknowledgement, as though pledging to stay by his side for every page yet to be revealed. Morning light crept into the garage, filtering through cracks in the old boards and illuminating the fragile papers Marcus had been examining throughout the night. The rusted car sat in the corner, silent, almost reverent, as if guarding the secrets it had held for decades. Marcus stretched, feeling the ache of hours spent hunched over fragile documents, but exhaustion was tempered by the exhilaration of discovery. He looked down at Duke, who remained vigilant, ears twitching, eyes scanning the room, tail low but alert. The dog's presence was a constant reminder that he was not alone in this quest, that instinct and loyalty could reveal truths beyond human perception. Marcus turned his attention back to the collection. Among the letters, sketches, and photographs were detailed military reports, accounts of soldiers whose names had vanished from official records, and personal journals that chronicled their struggles. One folder, particularly thick and bound with string that had yellowed with age, drew his attention. Marcus carefully untied it, revealing a series of documents that recounted the life of a Marine who had been stationed overseas during a conflict largely forgotten by history. The Marine's notes were not just tactical reports. They contained reflections, sketches of the camps, letters to family, and observations of moments of courage and despair. Marcus recognized the meticulous care, the discipline, and the attention to detail. These were the marks of a soldier documenting not only events, but the humanity entwined with them. Duke nudged a photograph toward him with his nose, a photo of a group of Marines standing proudly in formation. The young faces stared at the camera with pride, determination, and the unspoken camaraderie shared by men in service. Marcus's eyes lingered on one figure in particular, a young Marine with sharp features and eyes full of quiet resolve. The resemblance to Marcus's own unit was uncanny, and a chill ran down his spine. The photograph had been preserved for decades, yet here it was, hidden within a rusted car, waiting for someone to bear witness to the stories it represented. Marcus felt a surge of responsibility. These were not just historical artifacts, they were lives that demanded acknowledgement, courage that deserved to be remembered. Hours melted away as Marcus continued to sort through the documents. There were letters between soldiers and their families, journals detailing the minutiae of daily survival, and lists of comrades who had gone missing in action or returned home forever changed. Each page revealed not only the facts, but the emotions, the fears, and the hope that had sustained these individuals through harrowing circumstances. Marcus's hands ached from handling the fragile paper, and yet he moved carefully, knowing that the weight of history rested in his fingers. Duke's head rested on his knee now, ears still twitching, as if sensing the profound importance of each revelation. Among the most compelling discoveries were accounts of local civilians who had aided soldiers, hidden evidence of bravery, and small acts of heroism that had gone unrecorded in official histories. Marcus uncovered a journal detailing a civilian family that had sheltered soldiers in a town erased from the maps decades ago. The entries described nights filled with fear, whispered conversations in candlelight, and sacrifices made quietly, without recognition or reward. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he read these accounts. This was not just history, it was a testament to human resilience, courage, and compassion, preserved in secrecy for someone like him to discover. Duke's behavior intensified as Marcus pulled out a set of photographs depicting landscapes, towns, and buildings that had long since vanished. The dog sniffed each one, nudging Marcus toward specific images, guiding him toward connections and significance. Marcus realized that Duke was not acting randomly. He was leading him to the pieces that mattered most, to the core of the story. The dog's instincts had brought them here, to a convergence of lives and events that the world had chosen to forget, yet here they were, preserved in paper and ink, waiting to be acknowledged. By late afternoon, Marcus had cataloged dozens of documents, photographs, and letters, arranging them carefully on tables, the floor, and even atop the rusted car. Each item told a story, some of loss, some of courage, some of quiet heroism. One journal entry described a Marine writing to his sister after a long day of duty, recounting not the violence of war, but the simple acts that sustained him, sharing a meal with a friend, comforting a frightened comrade, noticing a flower growing in the dust of a destroyed village. Marcus read the entry aloud to Duke, who tilted his head as though understanding every word. The dog's presence lent a gravity to the act, reinforcing the sense that this was a sacred task, an act of remembrance and respect. As night approached, Marcus paused to look around the garage. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and the rusted car gleamed faintly, its dents and corrosion no longer just decay, but symbols of endurance, concealment, and survival. Duke sat proudly beside him, tail flicking faintly, eyes glinting with intelligence and unwavering loyalty. Marcus realized that the dog had led him not merely to a car, a toolbox, or forgotten papers, but to a responsibility to honor the lives, stories, and sacrifices documented within these fragile pages. He felt the weight of history pressing upon him, but also the strength to carry it, fueled by the unwavering presence of his companion. Marcus took a deep breath, gathering a batch of documents in his hands, and whispered to Duke, "We've uncovered their world, boy. Now we have to make sure it's remembered." The dog nudged his hand gently, as if pledging his continued support. Marcus looked down at him, a bond of understanding passing between them. The journey was far from over, but together they would piece together every story, every life, every act of courage hidden in the shadows of history. And as the garage lights flickered and the night deepened, Marcus knew that he had discovered far more than documents. He had uncovered a testament to humanity, guided by the instincts and loyalty of a dog who had seen beyond the surface into the heart of what had truly been forgotten. By the time evening settled over the garage, Marcus had fully immersed himself in the fragile world he had uncovered. The once forgotten rusted car now seemed almost sacred, its battered panels and corroded edges a silent witness to the decades it had kept these secrets safe. Papers, photographs, and journals were meticulously spread across the floor, tables, and even atop the hood of the vehicle, forming a patchwork of human history that had survived against all odds. Marcus leaned back on a worn stool, exhausted, yet his mind raced with thoughts, questions, and a growing sense of responsibility. Every item he touched carried the weight of a life, a story, a moment the world had long overlooked. Duke, ever vigilant, circled the garage once, sniffing at corners, ears flicking toward every creak of the old structure. The dog's presence had become a comforting rhythm, a reminder that Marcus was not alone in his discovery, that instinct and loyalty had brought them here together. Duke paused beside a stack of photographs, nudging a particular image with his nose. Marcus leaned in and picked it up, noticing the delicate pencil sketches over the photograph itself, a map, dates, and annotations that suggested an untold story tied to people, places, and events long forgotten. His heart quickened. This was not just a cache of memories, it was a carefully constructed archive, a legacy deliberately hidden, waiting for someone perceptive enough to find it. Marcus picked up a journal, its leather cover cracked and edges frayed, and began reading. The pages were filled with entries describing acts of bravery and compassion that had gone unrecognized. There were accounts of soldiers protecting civilians during conflict, families providing shelter to strangers in times of danger, and small, quiet moments of kindness that had changed the course of lives. The entries were written in a tone of humility, with the author often questioning whether anyone would ever know, whether anyone would ever care. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat as he realized that, through this discovery, those moments would not be lost. They would finally have witnesses. Duke nudged him again, resting his head gently on Marcus's knee, as if to say, "You're the one to honor them now." Hours blurred into one another as Marcus cataloged each document, photograph, and sketch. He discovered letters between soldiers and their families, detailing the human side of warfare, the fear, the longing, the quiet acts of courage that rarely appeared in official reports. One letter described a soldier's return home to a town that no longer existed, writing of empty streets, abandoned homes, and the resilience of the people who had survived despite loss and neglect. Marcus could feel the weight of these words in his chest, the sorrow and hope intertwined on the yellowed paper. He spoke softly to Duke, reading aloud snippets of the letters. The dog's ears flicked at each tone, responding as though absorbing not only the words but the emotions behind them. Among the most poignant discoveries were photographs of towns erased by time, landscapes that had shifted and changed, and families who had vanished from memory. Marcus carefully laid each image on the floor, noting the connections and patterns between them. Some images depicted children playing in streets now long gone, while others captured moments of triumph, grief, or solemn reflection. Marcus realized that the person who had hidden these treasures had understood the fragility of memory, the importance of preserving even the smallest details of human life. Duke nudged him toward a photograph of a young soldier standing beside a child, both smiling faintly in the sun. Marcus studied it, feeling the bond of loyalty, protection, and trust captured in that moment, a bond that mirrored his own relationship with Duke. The night deepened, and Marcus continued his work, photographing and cataloging each piece of the collection. His back ached, eyes strained from hours of focus, but he could not stop. The rusted car, once an object of mere curiosity, had become a vessel of memory, a gateway to a forgotten world. Every page, photograph, and sketch represented lives lived with courage, love, and sacrifice, stories that had been buried by time but were now in his hands to honor. He whispered to Duke, "We have to make sure they're remembered. Every last one of them." The dog pressed closer, head against Marcus's arm, tail flicking in quiet affirmation. As the first hints of dawn appeared through the dusty garage windows, Marcus took a moment to look around. He saw the full scope of their discovery: stacks of documents meticulously arranged, photographs spread out like a mosaic of memory, journals revealing emotions long silenced, and sketches mapping a world that had been erased from memory. And through it all, Duke remained steadfast, a sentinel who had led him here, protected the discovery, and shared in the responsibility of preserving it. Marcus realized with profound clarity that this was a task greater than himself, a mission to bear witness, to honor lives and stories that deserved recognition, and to ensure that the sacrifices, joys, and struggles of the past would not vanish again. Marcus's gaze returned to the rusted car, now bathed in the soft morning light. It had been more than a vehicle, more than a container. It had been a guardian, a silent protector of memory. And Duke, with his unwavering loyalty, had been the key, the guide, the one who had led him to this sacred responsibility. Marcus knew the journey was far from over, but he also knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. The world had almost forgotten these lives, these stories, and these moments, but now Marcus and Duke were the keepers of that history, tasked with ensuring that it would endure. He gathered a few of the most delicate papers, holding them as if they were priceless artifacts, and looked down at Duke. "We've got so much more to uncover," he whispered. The dog's ears flicked, tail swished, eyes bright with understanding and determination. Marcus smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The rusted car had revealed its secrets, but their journey had just begun. There were still stories to uncover, lives to honor, and a world that had been forgotten, waiting for them to shine light upon it. Together, man and dog, they had become guardians of memory, and nothing could deter them from their sacred mission. The following morning, a thin golden light seeped through the dusty windows of the garage, illuminating the treasure trove Marcus and Duke had uncovered. Marcus had spent the previous night immersed in the fragile histories of forgotten lives, documenting letters, photographs, and journals with painstaking care. Now, with Duke at his side, he began to piece together a plan. These stories, these acts of courage and humanity, deserved to be preserved, shared, and honored. They could not remain hidden in the shadows any longer. Marcus carefully gathered a batch of the most delicate documents, securing them in archival folders he had improvised from old cardboard. Each sheet seemed alive in his hands, the words whispering across time, recounting lives filled with triumphs, heartbreak, and quiet heroism. He paused frequently, reading aloud snippets to Duke, who would tilt his head as if listening, understanding more than Marcus could ever articulate. The bond between them was profound, a shared understanding that their mission had expanded far beyond a simple discovery. It was a moral imperative, a chance to resurrect stories the world had almost forgotten. As he worked, Marcus uncovered a set of photographs that left him breathless. They depicted a community wiped from history by neglect and disaster, families frozen in moments of laughter, children clutching toys, couples embracing in fleeting moments of joy, soldiers and civilians interwoven in acts of bravery and survival. Each image conveyed the weight of lives once vibrant but nearly erased, and Marcus felt a pang of sorrow mixed with determination. He realized that the rusted car, the dilapidated garage, and Duke's unwavering instincts had conspired to lead him here, to become the custodian of memory, to bear witness to a world almost lost. Among the photographs and letters was a small box of dog tags, corroded with age but still bearing names. Marcus's hands trembled as he held them, recognizing some from journals he had read, others from photographs he had cataloged. These were tangible remnants of lives dedicated to duty, sacrifice, and resilience. Marcus traced the engraved letters with his fingers, feeling the weight of lives that had been forgotten. Duke nudged the box gently, pressing his head into Marcus's arm as if sharing the responsibility, acknowledging that together they had uncovered not just a story, but a legacy. The day stretched on, and Marcus continued to catalog every item, photographing and scanning documents, carefully arranging them for preservation. The garage was transformed into a museum of memory, a sanctuary where forgotten lives and histories could finally be recognized. Duke remained steadfast, a silent guardian, his amber eyes reflecting the trust and loyalty that had brought them this far. Marcus marveled at the dog's intuition. It had sensed the importance of these artifacts long before Marcus could comprehend it, guiding him with a silent wisdom and unwavering dedication. As evening approached, Marcus reflected on the journey that had begun with a rusted car and a $50 investment. The garage had become a portal into a forgotten world, and Duke had been the key to unlocking it. The documents, photographs, and journals spoke of courage in the face of despair, compassion amid chaos, and human connections that endured even when the world turned its back. Marcus understood that their task was not merely to preserve these memories, but to share them, ensuring that the sacrifices, triumphs, and ordinary acts of heroism were recognized and remembered. Marcus carefully laid out the most important documents on the hood of the rusted car, a symbolic gesture of the past meeting the present. Duke sat proudly beside him, tail flicking occasionally, eyes bright with intelligence and unwavering loyalty. Marcus picked up a photograph of a young soldier smiling at the camera, a small child at his side, and felt the full weight of what they had discovered. This was more than history. It was a testament to humanity, a reminder that every life matters, every act of courage counts, and that memory itself could be preserved through diligence, care, and love. As night fell, Marcus secured the documents, carefully stacking them and preparing them for transport. He looked down at Duke, whose eyes reflected pride, patience, and understanding. "We've done it, boy," Marcus whispered, voice thick with emotion. "We've brought them back. We'll make sure no one forgets them again." The dog nudged his hand, tail wagging faintly, as if pledging his continued loyalty and shared purpose. Marcus knew that their mission had only begun. There were still stories to uncover, histories to restore, and forgotten lives to honor. Marcus leaned against the garage wall, exhausted but fulfilled. The rusted car, once a symbol of neglect, had become a vessel of discovery, a testament to endurance, and a keeper of secrets. Duke rested his head on Marcus's knee, a faithful companion and guardian of memory. Together, they had uncovered a world the rest of humanity had forgotten, and together they would ensure it was never lost again. Marcus knew that he could not do it alone, and that Duke's instincts, loyalty, and unwavering dedication had been crucial every step of the way. In the quiet of the night, Marcus made a silent vow. Every life documented in those fragile papers, every photograph, every journal entry would be honored. The sacrifices, joys, struggles, and courage of the past would not fade into obscurity. They had been hidden for decades, but now they had found a witness, a protector, and a storyteller. Duke nudged Marcus again, sensing his resolve, and together they left the garage for the first time in days, carrying with them a legacy far greater than any car, any toolbox, or any monetary value. They carried memory, history, and the enduring spirit of humanity itself. As Marcus closed the garage door behind them, he looked back at the rusted car one last time, illuminated by the moonlight. It had been more than a vehicle. It had been a guide, a guardian, and a vessel of truth. And Duke, with his unwavering loyalty and instincts, had been the catalyst, the partner who had brought Marcus to this moment. Together, they had ensured that the forgotten stories of courage, love, sacrifice, and resilience would finally be remembered. And as they walked away into the night, Marcus whispered to Duke, "This is only the beginning, boy. The world will remember them now." The dog's tail flicked in quiet affirmation, eyes gleaming with intelligence and understanding. The bond between man and dog had forged a bridge between past and present, and nothing could ever break it.